In this video, we'll take a look at how to enter value labels for a variable, which will be reviewed because we've done that before. But then I also want to show you how to apply value labels that were entered for one variable to a number of different variables, which can be really useful as it's a great time saver. So let's go ahead and get started. Here in this data set, notice that I have 10 people, and I have the variables gender, item 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And what happened here in this hypothetical example is that we asked people, males and females, 5 different questions, and they answered on what's known as a Likert scale. Now, you very well may have heard of a Likert scale before, and the first thing is you might have heard it called Likert scale, which is very common to call it that, but it's actually Likert, so it's pronounced Likert instead of Likert, and it was developed by Rensis Likert in the early to middle 1900s. He developed the scale, and it's used so commonly. It's used in this 5-point option, as you see here, 5 to 1, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. You'll also see it in a 7-point option. It's very commonly used that way, and less commonly so, but you'll see it in other ways like 9-point scale and so forth. And it's used with many different kinds of descriptions, definitely true, somewhat true, and so forth, not just agree as you see here. But let's take a moment and just explain this. It really is worthwhile because it is used so often. So in the most traditional use of the scale, which is what we see right here, we have a 5 equals strongly agree, a 4 equals agree, 3 is neither agree nor disagree. This is sometimes called neutral. 2 is disagree, and then 1 is strongly disagree. And what happens is a person reads a given statement, such as the following. If we had a social support scale, you might see something like this. On item 1, they would read the following statement. I can turn to others for support when needed. And then what they do is they read that item, they look at these 5 options, and if it's someone who has a lot of support in their network or friendships or what have you, they might answer 5 strongly agree or 4 agree. And if it's someone who doesn't experience a lot of social support, they might answer a 1 for strongly disagree or 2 for disagree, and so on. So the first person here in row 1, notice for item 1 they answered a 4, so they answered agree. Item 2 they answered a 5 for strongly agree, and so on. If we look down at item 1, did anyone answer strongly disagree? Let's take a look at that. We're looking for a 1 here, and notice that participant number 9, they answered a 1 on item 1, so they answered strongly disagree, and so on. So what I want to do here is go ahead and enter the value labels for item 1. So we're going to enter these into SPSS that you see here. And then I want to show you how to apply those to the remaining items in a very quick way. First of all, notice that we have gender. If I click on my value labels button here as a review, gender is already coded. I already entered those. But what I don't have entered is item 1, item 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'd like to go ahead and enter those to have them in the data set. So if I go back and look at this file at a later time, I'll remember that a 5 corresponded to strongly agree and a 1 corresponded to strongly disagree. So in other words, I'll know which direction the scale is scored. And what I mean by that is higher scores indicate greater social support because people strongly agreed with a given item, whereas lower scores indicated less social support. Since we're looking at entering value labels, let's begin with item 1. So I could either double-click on item 1 or I could go to the Variable View tab. Let's go ahead and double-click on item 1 right at the column heading here, its name. So I double-click that and notice it takes me to the Variable View window. So that's a quick way to get there if you want to access the Variable View window. And then we'll go to the Values column here, click on the None cell, and then notice the 3 dots appear. So I click on that, and then here let's start with the highest values first and move on down. So a 5 corresponds to strongly agree, so we'll go ahead and enter that. A 4 is for agree. A 3 was neither agree nor disagree. A 2 was disagree. And finally, a 1 was strongly disagree. And I click Add. Now I did that fairly quickly because this is our second video on creating value labels. So if you'd like to, you might want to take a look at the first video if you haven't yet for an introduction to this process. It's a little bit slower. Okay, so let's go ahead and click OK. They're all here. Just to review very quickly. 1 strongly disagree, 2 disagree, 3 neither agree nor disagree, 4 is agree, and 5 is strongly agree. Okay, so click OK. Now let's go back to our Data View tab. And here I can see the value labels are on. Here's my value labels, and I could stretch this if I want to. Notice the double arrow there. If I go to the right, I can see all of these values now very easily. So they've all been coded. Okay, now I want to go back to the Variable View tab, and then I'm going to show you a quick method for applying the labels. It really would be time consuming if I had to enter the value labels for each and every variable. So it would be nice to know a shortcut method for doing that. So let's go ahead and go to the Variable View tab, and then here we're going to select this cell if it's not already. So we're at item 1, we're selecting this cell, right click, the shortcut menu opens, select copy. Okay, so we just copied those value labels, and then click and drag over the remaining items, right click, select paste, and there you go. They're all in there. Let's take a look to make sure. Go to our Data View tab, and notice that the labels are all in place here. They're all there. So that was a very quick method for copying the labels. I'm going to turn these off. I'm going to click on this Value Labels button and turn it off because I typically like to see the numbers presented in the cell. But now I have that coded in my data file. And if I conduct any analyses, those value labels will be output in the results instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when I'm doing analyses like a frequencies table or what have you. Now, often what will happen is people will want to add up these items to create a total score. You could do that right here, where this variable would be item total, and it would consist of literally these values added together. So this would be 9, 13, and 10 is 23. So this would be 23. This next cell would be these values added together, and so on. If you're interested in doing that, you want to take a look at our video using the compute procedure in SPSS, where it's called adding variables together to create a total score. Okay, so you want to take a look at that if you're interested in that. But this video was to focus on a quick and easy method for copying value labels from one variable to one or more other variables. Now you should keep in mind the only time this is relevant is when the variables have the exact same categories. So I wouldn't want to copy a 1 to 5 Likert scale, those values to a 1 to 9 Likert scale, and what have you. So you want to make sure the scales are exactly the same in terms of the response options. And if they are, then you can do it, and it's a very nice and easy and quick method.